So in the last video, we have seen about the ClusterIP service where we have logged into one of the client that is nothing but a pod. And then through that pod, we were able to request to all the pods inside the node, right? So ClusterIP was the first point of contact with a static IP, okay, which even if the pods will get down and all, new pod will be created and it will route it easily. Okay, so these all things we have learned. So now what we are going to learn today is, so I will take you through another example. Here there is another file I have. If you can see my screen, so this is a cluster IP underscore 2. This is the another YAML script I have. I will do some changes here. Okay, I will make it as 81 here. Okay, just to confuse and make some errors, right? So that we will learn. Okay, so the main agenda of today's learning will be how this ports transfer the request whenever they gets, right. Okay, let's say backend service will get the request. So how this we will know, okay, this is we have to route it to this port only. Okay, so all this information we are going to see it now. Okay, so let's say what I'm doing is nothing different here. Again, 6 ports I'm deploying and I'm exposing the port 81. Same way I am creating a service, naming it as a backend service, and the port for this backend service is port 82. Okay, so it is going to listen on this port and the target port is 81, right? So this is the target port 81. So now let's say what will happen. We will go in the demo only. Let me meanwhile let me apply this file as well. Okay, kubectl apply -f dot slash cluster IP service 2. I will deploy this file. Okay, it will get deployed. Meanwhile, let's understand what is the problem here and what we are going to learn here. Okay, so today I will log in to login port. Okay, so this will be my entry port here, and through which I will try to send a request to backend service, that is this service, okay, which is listening at port number 82, and then through which I will send a request to target port 81. Okay, so this which is mentioned here. So now if somebody will do some changes here, like how we will identify which port actually they are listening, we are going to learn those aspects. Okay, so this is my login port, right? So let's change into the diagram also so that it will be easy to correlate. So today I am going to learn on login on the login port. Okay, so from login port, I'm going to send a request to cluster IP service, right? Okay, so that's the thing. I think it should be deployed by now. Yeah, it got deployed. Okay, so first query what we are going to execute and we need to see here is we will see like we will see okay, let's first log in, then we will discuss later. Kubectl, then exec. Okay, so first kubectl get all. Okay, so here you can see, okay, it is in still in creating state. Okay, so it is we have a login pod and client pod we have created yesterday itself, and we have got backend service that is a cluster IP service with this IP range. Okay, so what I will do is first of all I will try to do same process. That means I will log into this login ID login port, and then from the login port I will try to go inside the backend service, or I mean I will hit the cluster IP address for this one, and then we will see whether we are getting the result or not. Okay, so what command we have seen yesterday, it was kubectl exec -it, then what is my login pod, right, that is there, and then hyphen backslash sh bin slash sh plus sh. Okay, so you will log into the pod. Let's wait for a couple of minutes. So what is the error here? It took time. basically, so it is saying like container not found. So maybe because of this internet issue, this pod container is still creating, right? So it is not available. So we need to wait for a few more time to get these pods, all these pods available for us to run. Okay, so let's hold on for a couple of more seconds. Okay, so it is creating. Login port is still creating. Couple of them came into running state, which is good. Okay, let me check the status again. Okay, everything is running now. Okay, now what we will do is we will log into the pod. Okay, now I am inside the pod. Okay, now what I will do is curl and I will hit enter to this particular IP address, because this is my IP address, right? So what I'm trying to do is from my login port, okay, I'm sending a request to ClusterIP service. Okay, but let's wait whether it will succeed or not. We need to see that. It should fail, right? Why it will fail? Because it is pointing to port number 80, but when we expose this port in our YAML file, we exposed it to port number 82. Okay, so what we need to do is let's give it here port number 82 and hit enter. Okay, so now it is telling, right, failed to connect to this port 82 after 0 seconds, so could not connect to the server, right? So in both way you have tried, but it failed, right? Now what is happening, that we have to see now. Okay, so what we'll do is we will do the exit, and if you understand in this diagram, okay, or let's say here only, you are mentioning it to the receiving port as 81. Okay, here it is 81, but is it really a 81? when we when we mention anything on container port equals to 81, is it going to bind it in actual? That's not the correct statement, right? To check that part, let's go and execute few commands so that you will understand. Okay, first command what we will execute is first get the, okay, we have this pod names, right? So we can take these pod names from here only. I'll copy any of the pod name, and we will see that these pods, right, these pods which are created here, they are listening on which port. Okay, so let's say you are here, and when you are sending a request to pods, but pods are not listening to port number 81, right? Then it will definitely fail, right? Suppose it is listening on port number 80, and your request as per your YAML file is going on 81. So for 80, this cluster IP address will never be able to reach out. Okay, and the request will never go from here to here. Okay, so let's first understand what is the listening port for our pod. Okay, so we will do kubectl exec, and then I will mention my pod name. Okay, and this is the command netstat and hyphen ul. Okay, so now you see this is listening on port number 80, right? So that's the difference. That is the problem statement here. Okay, that is something we need to understand. So each pod here, right, if you will take any pod name, they all are listening to port number 80, and port number 80, right? They are all listening to port number 80, but you are when you are trying to send the request, right, in YAML file, you are sending the request to the target port, that is 81. Okay, same thing we can see into our command prompt also. Let me show you here. Okay, so kubectl get service. Okay, and my service name is, what is my service name? Backend service. Okay, I'll do control C, control V. Okay, and I will give the output. as a YAML. So you see, it is the target port for the cluster IP service is sending the request to port number 81 and it is listening to 82. Okay, so what is happening is, but here we saw, right, pods are trying to listen on port number 80, but our cluster IP address is sending it to 81. So there is a mismatch, right? They are ready to listen on 80, but we are sending out port number 81. So it is going somewhere else. The request is getting failed or timed out. Okay. So to understand more on this one, let's see how we can also check few more details like kubectl get. You can run a command describe. Okay, and then service service, and you can mention the service name. Okay, when you will hit enter, you see your port of that service is 82. That is fine. Your target port is 81. Your all the endpoints, all the IP endpoints are going to port number 81, right? They are all going to 81. But what is our port number? You see, if I execute a command, kubectl get all pods -o wide. Okay, so you see 10.2.66 10.2.66, and the request on this port IP address is correct, but the request is going on port number 81, right? But actual port for this is port, all the ports are trying to listen on which port, port number 80, right? So there is a mismatch, and that is why it is happening. Okay, so what we should do is, that is the error, and that is why requests were not going. Okay, so I will quickly delete it and kubectl delete -f +IP service _2. Okay, what I will do is I will delete all the resources and I'll recreate. Meanwhile, let's go and change into the YAML file. Okay, so this does not make any difference. This is just an, I would say, this is just an metadata which is telling all our developers that okay, behind the scene, okay, behind the hood, the image was exposed at port number 81. Okay, do you want, okay, let me show that part also before I create a new resource. Okay, so let it get deleted. Okay, so this is not making any sense. Even if you'll keep any other, the binding is not happening on this is not going to change the bindings basically. Okay, if you wanted to change the bindings, you have to go and change into the configuration file. Okay, so what we need to change, so currently what we have learned, so as per our diagram, right, these all are trying to listen on port number 80. So the actual mistake was here. Okay, so we need to change it to port number 80. Okay, so first debugging we have seen, right, how to check pods port using the commands which I showed, right? Cube exec your service, I mean, or your pod name -hyphen netstat -tuln. Okay, so that command you can give and then it will work. Okay, you will be able to see on which port your pods are listening. Okay, so next thing is, as I told, let me show you let me show you the Docker file as well, and I will show you where they are getting exposed. Okay, so okay, so it got deleted. Now let's do one thing. Docker inspect, and my file name is, or my image name is this one, right? So I'll control C, control V, and I'll hit enter. So if you do the inspect, right, you see somewhere config and you see expose. So it is telling like expose ports are 80 and 81. Now you might be confused like, okay, port 80 and 81 both are exposed, then why still the request was failing? Yes, as I told, right? Even if you can write any port while exposing, but binding is done in the configuration file on port number 80. Okay, it does not needs to be whatever number you mention on the expose while doing the expose. It is just for your convenient and it is just a metadata which is telling that okay, behind the scene it is exposed to port number 80. So what we should ideally do is uh, in our file as well, right? In our Docker file, we should write expose port is 80 only. Okay. Now this is what we have got to know that okay, there are two ports are open. But now let's see one more thing. Okay. So what I will do is Docker run -d detach mode and then name. I'll create a test container. Okay. And then I will give my image name. So it will run the command. Let's wait for a couple of seconds. So okay, so Docker run started on my test container. Okay, now what I will do is let's go inside this Docker exec test container. Okay, netstat -uln. Okay, now if you see the port, the container itself is trying to listen on the port number 80, right? So that is something we need to understand, and this is something we need to learn that whenever there is a port mapping we are doing, we first let's check what is the container port it is listening or what port the pod is listening, and then we should roll out the changes. Okay, you can use this commands. So this tells that okay, your service is going to send the request on which port. Okay, and this command will tell you your pod is listening to which port. Okay, yeah, so these things are important. Now let me Docker stop test container Docker rm test container. Okay, so these things you have learned, right? At a Docker file image level, I have also shown you that even if you are mentioning the expose here as 81, behind the scene it is still taking 80. Okay, so that is what I would try to show. Now let's try to save this file and try to run this file. Okay, so what we will do, docker apply -f /c ClusterIP 2 and I'll hit enter. So let all the pods get created. Okay, what command I ran? Docker apply. Okay, it should deploy your pods. So it has started deploying the pods, and in couple of seconds we can see all the pods also. kubectl get all. So So you see, yeah, it started creating. So it will take couple of seconds, and this is my cluster IP address. So now what I need to do is, if we discuss in the diagram, the login port, first I will log into this login port, then I will go to the cluster IP service, and then it will take me to the correct port. Okay, so let's wait for the containers to run or pods to run to be in running status. It is still creating. Okay, almost all is ready except last one. Okay, everything is running now. So what we'll run is docker exec -it. My pod name is login pod, and then what I'll give is plus asset. Okay. Docker. Oh, it's not Docker. It's kubectl command. Kubectl. Okay, so now you see I am inside it. Now what I'll do is I'll do the curl, and I will share my cluster IP address. Okay, what will happen? So if you see URL, will it take the request? No, right? Because I have not mentioned port 82. But if you see our file, here we have mentioned that cluster IP address will only listen at port number 82. So it is gonna fail in 20 seconds. Okay, let's wait for a few more seconds. Yeah, it got failed, right? Now what we should do is we need to mention the port number 82, and I'll hit enter. So now you see it has taken me to the right port, right? Earlier, what was the problem? We were trying to mention on target port was different, 81. So this does not make a sense, right? You see, right? Even if it is 81, 82, this does not making a sense because this image is bind at port number 80. This is just for a developer convenience that okay, behind the scene it is on port number 80. Okay, so target port is port number 80. How to check and all, I have already shared the command, and then once you run it, you will be able to execute and able to see it. Okay, so thank you guys. I hope you have liked the video, and this is very critical to understand. Just go through it this video 2 or 3 times, but it's not very hard. Main thing you need to understand is your target port and the port to which your image is bind should be same. Okay, this can be a different. This is just a metadata, and when you send the request, you have to send a request to the same cluster IP to which you are opening the port. Okay, thank you guys. Have a great day. We'll catch you in the next video.